Wow. Well, for everybody who's eventually going to watch this episode, I will tell you that obviously, through technical randomness, I did mess it all up. The link that you all are probably sitting on the moment, uh, you know, sadly got messed up. And, we're pushing through. We're going to do this live anyways because, I know all of you at home will want to eventually see what's going on. So I'm sure people will slowly start to figure this out. And hopefully, I tried to post it on Discord and I tried to post it on Facebook. I hope, I don't know if the other live is still randomly going, but I assume everybody's going to slowly figure it out. You're all technologically advanced to some degree. But we're going to start, and anybody who doesn't catch the beginning can ultimately catch it on the back end. So, hello everybody, and welcome back. This is the OverPower Mountain Podcast, and I am your host, Marcel, the greatest OverPower player of all time. Thank you, everybody who's slowly creeping in and joining me. Thanks again. Couple things. We got a new setup going on, and we're trying to make things, flow smoothly, I guess you could say, and it went anything but. Just like, I guess, the last couple of weeks. Community, it's been a very up and down couple of weeks. The first ever big money modern regional occurred, followed shortly by the tragic loss of a prolific member of the community and a friend, Phil Miller. However, you all haven't forgotten how we start this show, and that is OverPower. OverPower News. So, let's start the show off. First, we have the next big money modern regional on August 30th. Heroes and Games, Columbus, Ohio Convention Center. We got a $25 entry and we got a $20,000 cash and prizes. Now, if they follow suit of the last regional that occurred, you will basically get a $10,000 first prize. $10,000 first prize. Registration is actually now open on Cardio. So contact LRG or Doug Sims at Heroes and Games if you want more information in regards to that. Also, though, on August 31st, the Sunday, we have the Ohio stop on the NAOL Legacy Tour. And it hits the same Heroes and Games tournament room. Now, of course, that's Legacy, so that's all the cards included, not the Modern at the moment. Now, prizes, registration, and more info will come to that soon. Now, LRG continues their convention tour, adding a collector want list with the still, of course, hard to get 7 any power card with the Invincible character on it as well. And that is correct, Brian. There will be Friday night drafts as well ahead of that tournament, the regional and the NAOL. So get there early. Of course, I imagine even on Wednesday, Thursday, there'll be nothing but gameplay. And of course, yes, you hopefully can get those promo cards from a convention near you soon. Now, of course, LRG's next stop is actually going to be PAX West. Now, this is actually going to be the exact same weekend as the regional and NAOL tournaments. So PAX West will be in the Seattle area, and I believe, don't quote me on this, but I believe the Prodigy himself will be at the booth. Now, I don't know if he's going to be signing autographs or just talking to the fans about strategy and more, but I will give you more info when I do ultimately know that. But the Prodigy will be at the booth at PAX West if you want to go there, talk strategy with him, and just get to know the guy in general. I don't think he charges for autographs just yet. Um, Homefront news north of the border. Overpower has not hit store shelves yet. There's an interesting thing going on right now because LRG says they've sent it. Distributors claim they don't have it. It sounds like Canada is stuck in Buddha. Is Canada stuck in Buddha right now, my friends? Like, is a Canadian regional still happening? And will we even have the cards in time for Canadians to play with? Now, of course, I will keep you updated on all that. I imagine everything's going to flesh out over the next couple of weeks, but we are keeping a close eye on that up here in the north. Okay, my friends? Big, big, big fans of the Overpower card game, if you haven't already guessed. Finally, I would be remiss again to not inform the community that days after winning the regional tournament in Seattle, Phil Miller and his father passed away in a tragic car accident. His wife Laura survived and is slowly turning a positive corner to a long recovery. His legacy in this game is truly legendary. You will be missed by all, my friend. Um, I'd love, honestly, I don't know if anybody does this sort of thing, but I'd love for you all just to take a minute and have a moment of silence for our friend Phil Miller, one of the true legends and champions out there. And that's the news. So, obviously, a very tough time. A lot of people dealing with things in different ways. If I do hear any more positive news, I will send everything to you. Um, so, let's continue on. On July 26th at about 10:30 p.m., the first Big Money Modern regional was crowned. There was a champ, Phil the Legend Miller. However, there is a lot to talk about before we get to that moment of that man holding up that $10,000 check. So let's take it to the beginning of the day because a lot of people weren't there, and I want to give you sort of a quick snapshot of what you would expect coming to a regional. Now, I do want you to take a light grain of salt. It is the first tournament held by LRG, so they get passes on everything from me. Okay. Every single thing that you may think I'm saying in any sort of negative tone for any reason, pass, 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 pass. Because it's the first time they're doing this, and I expected nothing but hiccups. And other than a few things, which I will mention for pure transparency, everything was amazing and it was a great tournament. So we all arrived and had early access to the store Zulu Games, which, on a side note, was a great host. As we sat around the beginning of the day, it sort of felt chaotic. And I say it for the terms of it felt a little unorganized. After about 30 minutes of just sitting there, we were handed a deck list to fill out. After about an hour and 15 minutes, the first round was paired up. I personally, on the first round, was then asked for a deck check. After an additional 10 to 15 minutes later, which was basically an hour and a half of arriving there and sitting down, I started playing my first game. Now, after a deck check, I will sort of, give you these tidbits as, my mind thinks of them as well. When they are checking your deck, you have to remember they are putting cards in specific order. So they are putting, all the special cards together. They are putting all the power cards together. They are putting all the universe cards together. So in this situation, what you have to understand is when they hand your deck back, they did not shuffle that deck for you, and you should be incredibly thorough. Now, I know that you just waited 10 to 15 minutes to even start this game and they've given you extra time, but you have to understand if you don't properly shuffle your deck and you dupe out or you have bad situations, you have no one to blame but yourself. No one is rushing you to start the game after a deck check because you have all the time in the world to shuffle your deck. So maybe I should have shuffled mine a few more times, but I'm unsure if that would have made any difference with the way I was drawing cards in my particular first game. Um, and I will say this, three hands later, I lost. Now, great job, Jessica Sims. That is who beat me in the first game. At the exact time of that moment in that game, that was actually the number one and two ranked players in the world actually competing against each other. Shocked that wasn't on camera. So when you go 0-1 in a tournament, you instantly go into survival mode for the rest of the day. Now, everything I preached in regards to preparedness for a tourney, I always tell you guys do this, do that, rest between, bring snacks, do all that. Yeah, that was all gone. Um, I knew I had to turn it on, and I knew had to basically, from that point on, be almost flawless. Winning my next game started to ease in a little bit to the day, and I thought I could get back onto my routine. However, I missed the lunch announcement. Now, I'm sure he announced it. I'm sure he said, great things. I happened to miss the lunch announcement. I was chatting with somebody. 30 minutes goes by. I'm like, why aren't we starting the next round? And then all of a sudden somebody goes, it's lunch. And I'm just like, oh no, this day couldn't get any worse for you, Marcel. You really got to step this up. So they tell me there's about 15 minutes left, and I roll out, grab a protein bar because of course I don't even have snacks with me. I, have one electrolyte pack and like a bottle of water. Now, of course, great facility. There was food there. There was beverages. There was, other things you could get. Just not my cup of tea with what was going on. So again, knew I had to turn it on. I'm sitting right now at 1-1 in the tournament and missed the lunch. I'm like, oh God, I get the protein bar. I was in fight or flight mode. And I had to come to a far more deeper realm and just realize that, I'm 1-1. I'm back to kilter. All of a sudden, I just have to hold off one more loss. Well, five more rounds later, and I basically sort of clawed out a 5-2 record. Now, for the amount of people there, I knew ahead of time at least that 5-2 was going to get you into the dance for the big money. And expecting a dinner break at this point, the players were then asked whether or not they just wanted to continue through. Now, I can already tell you, I only had a protein bar that day, and I was already a little, stressed about the structure of the day and everything going forward. So, it came down to a vote, and I may have heavily swayed my influence to make sure we got that 30-minute break. But, we ultimately did get that 30-minute dinner break due to the vote. Now, this is one thing I am going to say as I finish off this, rant about my tournament and experience. I will ask LRG, as you do move forward, that a structure for the day be laid out ahead of time. This is when we're going to do our lunch break. This is when we're going to do a dinner break, or we're not going to do those. Asking random people for votes in the middle of a long day, I'd rather just a full structure thought to that process as well, which I imagine will come in the next regional as we sort of move forward. Um, it's just that it was a little tough at times to sort of not know what to expect next. Um, Fortunately, though, I will say we got that dinner break, and I was very fortunate that Phil and myself actually got to walk off and go get a quick bite and an energy drink together and have, chatting sort of strategy, our decks, what we were thinking about top eight, as we were actually paired on different brackets, knowing that we wouldn't face each other until the finals, should it have arisen. So, it was a really enjoyable sort of 30-minute sort of chat and saunter with him in that regard. Well, of course, I returned to a top 8 match against finalist Joe Peters. After a blunder, a simple, light, I didn't block that particular attack blunder in the first hand by yours truly, the game slowly went to Joe Peters' way. Seeming to have an answer at every turn for every card that I could potentially have in play to gain advantage back in the game, he had the answer. And within 5 hands, my day in tourney had ended. Joe played flawlessly in our quarterfinals. Flawlessly. Couldn't have played it better myself, across from myself. And he took full advantage to all the small, little incremental mistakes that I had made in the game. That's something we're going to talk about as we sort of progress through and talk about these next decks as well as we talk about. So, before we get to the decks, though, here's a few things I learned in this modern tourney. I will be transparent with you. I had not really overly practiced the modern format. As you know, we had just played an NOL tourney. I was very focused on that, and I just kind of switched my mind about a month and a half before the regional, silly of myself, to pay attention to this sort of format. Now, with my practice games and with the regional, I've played maybe about 20 games of Modern. Yes, that's including the 8 games of this tournament. So I, again, have not even done what I preach to you at home to do. But you know who did? The first and second place of this tourney. They both played a lot of this format, and it showed. And I can only learn from that, move forward, and trust me, I'm already starting to play more and more and more and more. It was a great game, Joseph Peters. It was a fantastic game on your part. Mine was just pure crumble at that moment in time. Um, so this is kind of what I learned about the modern tournaments and format. And again, this is all for me, transparent, hoping to get you better. And for those people who are a little bit nervous heading in, maybe these pointers can sort of assist you as you move forward. So, Fast and Furious. Organization between rounds is fast and good. The tournament organizer was well on it, updating things, moving things, progressing things. Once the tournament started actually flowing, you were always playing your next game very quickly. Keep track of the Grim Reaper and other key cards that have been played. Freya's, Hades. Whether you're looking across the table at a Wicked Witch, you're thinking about, Harness the Wind. Robin Hood has his, discard power card, draw 2 come up yet. These are all things you have to keep track of these cards. The person who keeps track of these cards better generally is the one who has major advantage in a game. And what I mean by that is know the Grim Reaper hasn't come up, know you need a defense for it, and constantly reviewing, okay, Harness the Wind hasn't been played. Okay, I'm going to have to deal with that. That draw 3 from Deja Thors hasn't been played. I'm going to have to deal with that. Okay, Wukong has an 11 and a transformation trigger. These are all things you have to keep of, and just keep reviewing that list in your head over and over and over and over. This is what I'll say. Bring snacks and supplies for the day. Okay? Be prepared for the unexpected. You know, Obviously, this being in Seattle, it was a little bit tougher for me to be normally as prepared as I would because there's planes and so on. I do bring a lot of these like little energy drinks and focus drinks that I have that I would generally just bring across the border, obviously not through a plane. So I will be much more prepared at the next regional I attend. But have these things with you. Had I had my natural preparedness, apocalyptic kit with me, I would have easily just hit 3 granola bars and 2 fruit strips. Like, and then I would have been totally fine. Lunch, what? Let's go. I don't even need lunch. Dinner? Yeah, we don't need to go. I'll just eat another, bunch of things from my snack drawer and hit another electrolyte pack. So bring those things, be prepared for the unexpected, and just hydrate throughout the day a lot as well, especially as I learned, if you're traveling through plane or, long distances, just make sure you're hydrating a lot and get a lot of rest. A lot of people are staying up these nights before, and I just don't recommend it. I know the nerves are there, but you have to do everything you can to hydrate and rest. Take your own personal time between rounds. Okay. I saw a couple people doing this to beautiful effect. Felipe from Brazil, every once in a while I'd look over and he'd just have his headphones on and he'd be in the corner and he'd be trying to clear his mind and get ready. Yes, we're all here to have fun. Yes, but there is a reason you came, and if the reason is just for fun, then by all means do that and have all the chats you can. But remember, the reason you're there is this is a big money modern tournament and you're there to focus and win. But with that also being said, there is another side to that where don't be scared to ask around about decks, talking to people and their experiences with people they played that you may eventually play. You could actually gain some great insight from just having a quick conversation with an opponent and basically getting into a situation where, you know, through some good conversation, you learn someone's cataclysm and or how many specials they may have. Like, this is how tournaments work, and you have these conversations on the side, and basically, like, instead of sitting over and scouting someone's deck, you're kind of just chatting about it. So you can learn a lot about, decks, how people are playing, their styles, and as these tournaments get to hundreds and potentially thousands of people, having those conversations and your own personal rest time, finding the breakdown between both. One of the big things I learned, one of the biggest insights, period. If you are fortunate enough to make the playoffs in this particular regional was untimed. From quarterfinals, semifinals to the finals. Untimed. Slow down. Remember why you are there. You put all that training in, all that work in. Every decision matters. In modern, micro decisions matter and big boy memory card matters. Those are the keys to success. Obviously, having a great deck, having a great build, all of that. But those are the big keys, is just understanding that little micro decisions. Do I block that 4? Is it an offsuit? How many offsuits? Do I see any other colors of that? That's the most important one to block. Ooh, I take it. Why did you do that? Why did you do that? Oh, because you weren't thinking for that 1 second. Well, guess what? That character is dead now. This game is essentially over. Now, it is modern. It's a very, sway style game. So there is a lot that can sort of go one way to the other, one way to the other in particular games, especially, with Grim Reaper floating around there. Um, a lot can happen essentially in a game. Draw threes, a lot of different things, different rounds. You never give up in modern. If I can teach you that, you never give up in modern. There were at least 3 different games. Amazing game against Adam. I believe he's in San Francisco. We had an amazing game, and he killed one of my characters like in the first round. I didn't expect it. I just another one of those scenarios where a micro decision, I lost a character, but I didn't give up. I said no. I said, what did I tell you? I was in fight or flight mode. I said, activate Horseshoe. This is the moment. And I pushed through that game, and through a weird, unique way, I was able to win it. And it was very different style of overpower. It's not what I'm used to, but I didn't give up. I continued to play. And trust me, there will be many games and many tournaments coming up, especially these regionals, where you think, oh, I'm down and out in the first hand. That was not at all what my deck was supposed to do. Well, guess what? Your deck's about to do what it's supposed to do, and their deck won't do what their deck is supposed to do. So don't give up as you're moving forward in these tournaments. Please. That is just, and follow those micro decisions. Key thoughts. Key thoughts. Yes, I'm going to say very quickly as well. Sean Ballantyne, thank you very much on LRG's behalf for flying out and being the judge at this tournament. It was one of the moments where I literally thought there was not a moment that was judged incorrectly. There was not a moment that a person didn't fully understand why you were making the ruling. Presto, presto, presto job, my friend. Sadly, I believe you're going to be competing for this Big Money Modern as we move forward. So we'll see how the judging continues moving into these regionals and other big events, nationals. So let's get to how the top four players and their decks did. You know, my first impression with the top four and their decks, four different home bases in the top four. Four different home bases in the top four. Wow. Think of that for a moment. You had Dracula's Armory. You had Asclepion. You had the Round Table. And can anybody guess the last one? People often seem to forget it. Yeah, that's right. The land that time forgot. Well, let's talk about that home base and a certain somebody. Fourth place, Felipe Cagno. I don't know if I said that. Cagno. That was not Brazilian accent. Please forgive me for that. Brazilian style overpower is alive and thriving. This guy almost came in and Hoist Gracie'd UFC 1 the tournament. I'm talking that he had two Max 6 characters and a home base that many forgot about. Felipe made a statement at his first Big Money Modern Regional. Leonidas, Jane Porter, Zorro, Dr. Watson in reserve. No event. His Cataclysm, Fairy Protection. Home base, the land that time forgot. Two Max 6 characters, 3 threat level points given to a home base. You're giving up a lot. You're giving up a lot. I had the fortune to talk to Felipe after the tournament about deck and strategy. Bringing the powerhouse pillars, that is Leonidas and Zorro, Felipe already had a structure of dual 8s, defense, and a Reaper block built in. Using Jane on the front line, almost like a blinking lure. I loved how he actually played her in the center of his team, almost taunting you like she's the leader of my team and you need to attack her. However, most people probably attacked other characters, allowing Felipe to, influx a bunch of intellect attacks through both special and teamworks from Jane Porter. Felipe oftenish got hits on the key characters. And of course, he waited, knowing people would forget the land that time forgot. It's easy. Concession almost seems like a free option when you're playing the game of Overpower, especially when we used to go and play in this defensive laden style environment. Now all of a sudden defense is at a premium and you don't just have these avoids placed on characters that are universal. Well, what happens in this environment is you start playing battles down to your last card. And all of a sudden you're playing your last defense and you're like, okay, I got through that. I concede. Well, Felipe was ready. If you conceded, he not only had a Jane Porter 2 special card, intellect, ready to throw at you for the kill, which of course, was a secondary suit, But guess what? He also had any power card to throw at you as well. Now, you can't throw them both at the end of a round, but of course, having the ability to throw either or really gave him the flex. When you had two hits on a character, he went hunting after you conceded. Because guess what? When we all concede, we do not have any more like defense. That's oftentimes why a person concedes the battle. And if you're in that situation time and time again, and you have that last shot at them, imagine you just have two rainbow color hits on them and your main suit is the kill shot. Well, guess what? Every round they have to hold a card in their hand. Well, now they have to start holding big defensive cards or big power cards in their hand, and those don't get placed because they need them for those particular characters. There is an interesting dynamic. Do not forget about the land that time forgot. Um, People just push battles, knowing you can run and fight another day. And then Land That Time Forgot is going to just continue to be a hidden, in plain sight weapon. With solid play and a discipline both in play and between the rounds, Felipe is a player who is studying the game and bringing his own tested take on OP to success. We will see if he is just the tip of the Brazilian overpower surge or the whole picana. Jane, as I can see the traveling goof making some great comments. And of course, again, if you are watching these afterwards at home, these comments are always there available for you live as well. So stroll through them as you're sort of watching. There's a lot of insight in these comments. Jane, oh boy, made 2 of the top 4 decks frontline. Spoiler alert. Well, she brought an extra Reaper defense, in particular for Felipe. Of course, with the shift into the Jaina Void. She also brought, I'm not sure if it was 1 or 2 pins with Lady of the Jungle as well. I am actually very curious if Felipe will return with this deck or push to something new for his next appearance. Through solid grid and great play and the cards falling his way, luck is always a play, especially now in Modern. Felipe finished 4th. The only thing I did not get to know is, did he play ethno-archaeologist? And if he did actually play ethno-archaeologist, knowing that he was trying to lure attacks towards Jane, I'm curious actually how it played out on the day with all the shift mechanics that started to actually creep into the meta. Felipe, if you are watching this now or later, please throw a comment in and tell us about your ethno-archaeologist experience. With a 4th place finish, this is fantastic, especially somebody who hasn't come and had a lot of experience in big tournaments. This just shows that if you put the experience in, you watch the podcast, you listen, you put all your thoughts together, and again, just play, play, play. Felipe mentioned that he played this deck over and over for months, was grinding this particular deck into its play form, and he played it perfectly. When you actually watch his play on camera, he's playing relatively at a high level and relatively flawless for essentially a dual max 6 character deck. It was really quite impressive. And, I'm very curious to see what Brazilian Overpower has to bring, to the Overpower tournament scene. Great job, Felipe. Congratulations. 3rd place, Andrew the Prodigy Taylor. Wicked Witch, Mina Harker, Sun Wukong, Billy the Kid in reserve, Asclepion as the home base, no event, Cataclysm, Fairy Protection. I was curious to see if Andrew's game would shift well into the Modern. and if he would start to understand that Overpower is not the game that we all know and still play actually in the legacy format. Overpower as a game is shifting and changing very fast. And almost play style is changing. The way to win the game is changing. The game itself is changing. You're either going to change with it or you're not. This is where you evolve and become great, or you stay stuck in your ways and you sit back. Well, Andrew stepped it up once again for Seattle. Obviously, hometown advantage. Using Harness the Wind and Transformation Trickery to wild success. Both Witch and Harker have discards for incredible board control. And with the double shift plus the Asclepion Sprinkle, this deck had really decent depth. Double shifting and having the ability to have two chances at the complete remove from Wukong as your combo, as just one of your win conditions, great depth to a deck. Wukong himself already creates that combo, but the fact that you can have it 3 different times, of course, using Gemini as well, that's some depth to it. Very great thought process, especially with the Asclepion sprinkle to it. Andrew was seen navigating specials like a pro. Or sorry, Andrew was seen negating specials like a pro. Offensively for Asclepion, or revealing his hand of big boy cards. Andrew's savvy placement led to him having small edges until his shift bombs could truly be deployed, with multiple Reaper defenses from both Mina Negates and the Wukong Void. Andrew was always on the offensive, it seemed. When he got in trouble, he clearly starting to master the modern. Anytime he was getting in trouble, he would always just basically rely on the shifts and the fairy protection to sort of give him the through to those rounds, or basically use that as another additional win condition. Oftentimes seeing himself Gemini for Harness the Wind and getting it a second additional round. Unbelievable one per deck for a character. He's clearly starting to master the modern. Andrew will have to be continued to be watched in this environment for new meta shifting deck ideas as he continues to gain experience in high leverage games. I would be very wary of him in top eights. He looks to be very much like a stalwart continuing on for almost all of 2025. Now, I know he's not being able to attend the Ohio Regional, as again, he will be at PAX West, I believe, signing autographs and showing people how to play the game of Overpower. It still has to be seen how Andrew continues his quest against some of the country's best and strongest players. Stringing the grid loosely together on his team through Wukong, Billy, and then using Mina as a bridge to get over to the Wicked Witch. Now, of course, this grid works well, especially when you break down Andrew's application of his 2 power card approach to his deck builds. Now, that already alone creates this very low duplication. Now, in Modern, that creates an even more lower duplication rate when you're essentially making every special a 1 per deck through your characters. So you can imagine hand after hand, you are very rarely drawing duplicates unless it's a really bad scenario. He did play 3/8 power cards though, just to keep everybody aware of that as well. So highly limiting duplicates. Now, this creates a positive environment for this deck to thrive under this player particularly. Now, sadly, running into a playoff rematch against the eventual winner, Phil Miller, this really was his only major folly at the moment of the tournament. Playing another top tier player in a very pressurized game micro decisions. And even Andrew will say it was a micro decision and a few bad dupes that just end those games. You have to take your time, you have to pay attention, but sometimes it's just a bad moment, a bad dupe, and a bad, oh, my opponent just got a great hand after that. Now, of course, he relatively played a straightforward deck with shifts and negates for defense, board control with discards, and decent size attacks through the deck. Now, again, the shifts trying for that combo for Wukong, or again using the Wukong as an Asclepion draw. Constantly still stringing together attacks with both teamworks and allies, using both a hefty amount of both. He was always pushing, pushing, pushing this aggro style at you, almost like I don't discard, I'm continuously aggressive. You're getting 2 to 3 attacks at a continuous pace. Can you keep up with that? And in most cases, a lot of decks can, but then it breaks down to his overall spectrum view of that deck was also quite nice. And that's where those micro decisions of blocking that 3 energy or that 3 strength, or sorry, that 3 brute force becomes major decisions in this new environment. This might not be the meta for faint of heart, though, as we approach this sort of shifting meta. It is not easy to perfect. I also did play a shift style of deck. And I will tell you, there are moments where your brain is making a lot of wild decisions. So if you are thinking about going with a shift style meta, I will say practice. Practice, 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 because knowing where you're going to put hits, knowing how to place your cards, where you're going to place your cards, which cards to place, those will all pay a lot in your shift style meta. Understand why you're shifting, who you're shifting to, and for what reason. You are truly living up to the nickname, Mo, my friend. You are the prodigy. And again, great tournament, great tournament, great tournament. Looking forward to seeing you play either in Toronto, Boston. Are those the next 2 regionals? I don't actually know what's happening after, but we will find out. I believe there's a Toronto regional. Like I said, we'll find out. Second in the tournament, we have Joe Peters. Wicked Witch. We got a theme going. We got a theme going here, friends. Wicked Witch. Joan of Arc. Jane Porter. Morgan Le Fay in reserve. Dracula's Armory. No Event. And Cataclysm Fairy Protection. Now, obviously, I got to play Joe in the quarterfinals, and got a nice thrumping. But it was 5 hands, so I got to see a lot of his deck before he thrumped me out, and I got to see a lot of what it was meant to do. And of course, I got to watch a little bit of his video games now that are online as well. An all-female deck, and it is awesome. It is flat out awesome. Now, I had my eye set right away on Joan, as I feel Joan of Arc is almost on the level of Robin Hood. You see that character, you killed him. You killed him as fast as you humanly can. Oh boy, you know what's angry about that though? If early feminist leader hits the board, it goes to the astral plane. Who thought of that one? Like the fact that she's inspiring from beyond the grave, I don't know who decided on that card. Joe, you put together a deck that there was just beauty to it. The synergy, it was all beautiful. Now, this deck is good. And then EFL hits the table, and this deck just lights up. Like, I'm talking, this deck goes from like 0 to 100. Like, Like you line up beside this car on the road and it just looks like a normal car. It's nice, looks nice, but it just looks like a normal car. And then all of a sudden, you see Joan of Arc's driving, and and she just goes EFL, and she just hits the EFL nitrous button, and the deck just lights up. Joe used Harness the Wind like a pro poker player uses his big stack. He would hold it until the right hand, and then he would push all in. Like, if I could describe his way of play of the day, that's almost it. Harness the Wind, all in. Constantly venturing big on Harness the Wind, Joe found himself having a great day, shifting into Burned at the Stake. Shifting into Burned at the Stake for Joan of Arc for an amazing finish him style combo. Amazing. What are you talking about, Marcel? Oh, well, Harness the Wind can move any attack to any character. Okay, well, I'm moving them all to Joan of Arc. Oh, okay, Joan's just sitting here. I got EFL in play. Okay, maybe I got her 8 out as well, or, Protection of St. Michael. Oh, it's for round for the win? Oh, I'm just going to park about, 15 venture. That's pretty much, almost all you have in this hand anyways. And now I'm going to burn Joan at the stake. I am going to remove all of those hits. They will not count towards venture total. And I'm going to draw a card. Like, the fact that you already just win the hand and then you're like, but I'm going to draw a card as well on top of it. It didn't actually happen to me, but I think I would have got really angry if that would have happened. Because to not only like lose 15 points of venture or plus, but then you get to draw a card. What? You get to draw a card. Wow. What a great finish him style combo. Using Joan's inspirational leadership to keep pressure on consistently, especially when EFL is in play and that's a 6. Each teammate may make an additional attack. Is on the board, shifting into a Jane Porter. Shifting and then into a Jane Porter on the same round. Into Not a Damsel. Oh, that's right. I just avoided your Grim Reaper. Oh, and discard a card from your hand. Thank you. Like, this is some... And that could have all happened in the same round. Because Harness the Wind, all in. Joe's control came through aggression and surprise. Now, he was sporting 2 multi-8s in that deck and 2 7 special attacks. Now, of course, that deck hit hard. 3 of those gaining +2 from EFL, of course, turning into 2 10 multis as well as a 9. All of this while saving 3 points. While saving 3 threat level points for Dracula's Armory. Dracula's Armory and Fairy Protection and Harness the Wind. Like, that's just defense for days. That's defense for days. Think of what you could do with just those 3. Like, every round I get an additional +3 on a defense, plus Harness the Wind 1 random round, plus my Fairy Protection around him. He must have just felt like he was under a warm blanket. And then just, when he faces those combat decks that are just getting attacks through, he goes, St. Michael, can you protect me now? Because you can't forget that he also had that. Avoid any attack with a combat icon. Like, that card all day, I was sitting across from it. And, I always thought about Joan, and I thought, oh, that's a defensive card's medium at best. It's a combat-heavy environment right now. That is a monster defensive card. Plus the fact that you just use that avoid and then all of a sudden the Wicked Witch One Eye can't come through back at you. Like, no intellect attacks can, like, it's a big card. Do not forget about Protection of St. Michael in a combat rich field. This deck has some true depth and win conditions. When you factor in a full negate and remove from his reserve character, we didn't even get to his reserve character yet. Full negate back there. I had my Lady of the Lake draw 3. I looked across the board at Joe and said, "You already used your Merlin." And he said, "I know." And then he placed a negate on Morgan Le Fay and looked me dead in my eyes. I didn't like it. I didn't like it one bit. What doesn't this deck have? Like, it may have come down to a dupe or two as to why I'm not talking about this as the winning deck of the regional. Understand that. Like, Joe Peters is going nowhere. Like, and with a little bankroll, and I'm sure a happy wife now backing him at home, prepare to face this wrecking ball of a player as we continue. Great tournament, Joe. Great tournament. The synergy of your deck, the depth of how you understood your deck. Now, we talked about your deck a little and we talked about how much you played your deck. And you said, "Oh, there were days where I even came in here and I wasn't in the mood. I just wasn't even in the mood to play." And guess what? Those games, those days where you went in and you practiced with people because you were just trying to get people ready for the tournament and you put, reps in with your deck, it showed. Because when I played against you, you were flawless. Like, I'm talking, there was not even a light opening for me to take. Everything was there. You played a solid game, my friend. Great tournament. I look forward to our rematch. I am very curious, Joe. I'm not sure if you're on right now. I know you were earlier. If you also played ethno-archaeologist, as I think it was a really big card for the day, but I'm not sure if people actually played it thinking it may have actually been a discard. But I think it may have been a big card moving forward. So did you play ethno-archaeologist from Jane? Discard all special cards placed in play with remainder of battle or remainder of game text. Very curious. 2 Jane Porters up front. I think you would put that in your deck. I imagine I would, especially in this environment where cards like that are huge. We just got an answer. So, of course, Joe Peters has stated that he did have it in his deck, and it was actually huge. Very good every time he got it into play. Now, this is what I'll say. We are getting to... Oh, hello, Mr. Taylor. You are going to have to rewind. We spoke about you very fondly just a short minute ago. Now, before we get to the winning deck of the tournament, smash the like button. Smash the like button. Subscribe, hit the bell, and watch all the live streams and videos. I appreciate it. Always trying to grow the channel. We're trying to get bigger. Thanks for watching. Want to bring you nothing but the best OverPower content on the internet. And I'm going to keep trying to do that. So thank you for all the support. The winning deck. First place. Phil the Legend Miller. Leonidas. Zorro. Deja Thoris. Billy the Kid in Reserve. Round Table. Event. Call of Cthulhu. Hits with an intelligence icon do not count to venture total this battle. Cataclysm. Lady of the Lake. Draw 3 cards. Discard duplicates. This truly looks like a championship deck. Grid, specials, event synergy, cataclysm choice. To the Reaper defense. All surrounded by the two pillars of Leo and Zoro. The new pillars, Leo and Zoro. What doesn't this deck have? A loss in the finals, that's for sure. Sorry. I sadly did not actually watch the finals live. So I hope to see it very soon. LRG, let's get that top 8 posted. But it sounded like it actually went back and forth. It sounded like, from what I heard, there was, a Venture 4 to a Venture 4, from one player to the next, from one battle to the next. This deck had many win conditions in it. But the most glaring one was the actual player. Phil perfected the placing strategy, often actually playing whole hands without touching a placed card. Pairing a solid deck with a player like this, who knows how to place, is a recipe for a tournament win. Before top 8, we spoke lightly about our decks, and he said Deja's draw 3 was a star for the day. He said he would often actually Gemini for it and get a draw 6 in hands. He said paired with the Lady of the Lake, that's draw 9. He looked at me and he actually said, I put that in there because of you. And he goes, I made sure I had all this draw power that if whatever wacky deck you decided to come when you ventured for the win, I would at least be able to draw 9 against you. And I said, of course you thought about that. He said he was drawing all day. Between those 2 draw cards plus the Gemini replacement, you could see that that's its win condition on its own, let alone the solid deck, the solid grid, the event synergy. The symbiotic nature of this deck was exactly what I was preaching to everybody about before this tournament. The event worked in perfect cohesion with it. The deck was a perfect grid alignment. Reaper stoppers. What again didn't the deck have? 7s, 8s. It had a lot. Phil was the only one playing round table. Now, he said to me he liked it for an early Gemini, because often he would get these Geminis and not really have much to play with it. So he loved the idea that he was placing the Gemini early in the game. And then he said after that, his favorite moment would be to place the Freya. And of course, to have Freya on the home base and then have Merlin on a character. He said it was like almost complete perfect defense, like old. I don't think he was a fan of Diplomat from Deja, which is to play the card and draw one for every additional card. He told me that the timing never seemed to really work out. Now, with the pillars of Leo and Zoro pairing up with Deja, though, you are consistently throwing those 8s, 2 different 7s, a 6 in specials. Some over and over again because they're not one per deck. This deck was not sore for Venture at all. Also adding in an offsuit energy teamwork for Deja as well. Phil had a great spectrum all across the board. But the thing I liked the best was he was the only person to add in one of the new Bet Big events that I reference them as. No cards with an intelligence icon
count for venture total. Now, I think he had a total of 3 in his deck because I think it was just the 3 multis. Think about that. You look across the table now. The the team doesn't have to be an intelligence team across the table. There are intelligence icons on Teamworks, on allies, on specials. They are all across this game. That was a big event. Big event. And again, one of those bet big style events. Only one to put it in his deck. I also did play an event. I did not play that event though. Very well thought out. Worked so perfectly with his deck that he knew if he looked across the board and even saw 1 or 2 intelligence icons, he had you. He had you, not only with his draw power, but just with probably the cards that were placed there on the table. This deck is a true masterclass in meta guessing, deck construction, and attrition of play. What an amazing tournament. I was very glad to have seen Phil take home the first tournament. Phil started to really pick up his playtesting. I started to notice, several weeks before the tournament, consistent play on Discord. Heard about him going and traveling to play other people. He turned it on, and it showed. Now, what did I just say? Phil just played a dramatic amount before this tournament. Joe Peters played a dramatic amount before this tournament. 1 and 2. And I can tell you those 2 people did not have a lot of sleep. They did not have a lot of sleep going into this tournament, either of them. And you can ask them why personally when you see them. But I can tell you, practice, practice, practice. These 2 gentlemen just showed you what it takes to win a big money modern regional. Thanks for showing us the champion path to walk. No one will ever honestly do it the same. Couple final thoughts when it comes to modern. Are Leo and Zoro the new pillars of OverPower? Is that the new go-to? The new crutch we all sit on? Leo, Zoro, pick 2 others? We'll find out. We'll find out as this meta keeps evolving and we move forward to new, bigger events. Do you have something in your deck for the Reaper? He will come across the table and you will either accept it and discard 4 cards, or you will have that moment to say no thank you. Will this new meta of shifting gain traction? Again, it takes a type of player to be able to play this new shift meta. Will it actually gain the traction to it? What new meta thoughts are getting sparked in you as we start to evolve and push forward with these new shows and new modern meta talk? Modern's clearly taken over the OverPower scene for the moment. What meta are you bringing? Remember, the next regional's here. You know now what you can see and what's happening. What are you going to bring? And whatever you're going to bring, figuring it out now and playing it over and over and over will be your best chance at success. Thanks for watching this very, very tougher episode for me to get through. Keep thinking OverPower, deck building, and getting to the top of the mountain. We're going to return again next Wednesday and every Wednesday after that until the tournament. This is the OverPower Mountain podcast, and I am the OP Goat. Good night.